What's happening, Guitar Corner friends? It's your host, Goopster. I'm about snowed in here in the Enchanted Forest tonight. I got to get out, get that driveway moving here at some point. I got a little writer's round at Cabana Taps tonight in Nashville with Carter Halsey and our friend Kiernan. And I think there's going to be about two bar backs and a cricket in that room, but that's okay. Those guys are beasts. I'll learn something, and it's always good to have at-bats. So I'm going to play a song. I'm going to send this up to Jomer. I'm going to play a song that I'm going to do tonight called Mine to Save. And then I'm going to talk about it, I think, in relationship to a new hero of mine, somebody who I always, dug his music, but I did not realize just how brilliant this cat was, unfortunately, till we've lost him, Mr. Tom Petty. So we'll get into that in a second. Here's Mine to Save. Has no mercy, but I will sit with you. Leave your heart out on the table, I will make it new. But you know that it cost me to be the one that pulls you through, to keep smiling at the blade that cuts me right in half, that cuts me right in two. And I cannot fix you, I cannot make you stay. You're not mine to rescue, you're not mine to save. And the night is roaring, rallying round your blame. I fold my hands and pray. Sometimes God forgets your name. A cage full of roses, string lights and burning flames. It's too late for us now. It can never be alright. It can never be the same. And I cannot fix you, I cannot make you stay. You're not mine to rescue, you're not mine to save. You're not mine to save. Last verse. Courage of my memory, striking in the dark. The angels are so tired, they cannot forget, they cannot forgive who you are. And it hurts to listen, and it hurts to care. I killed off one of your ghosts, I look behind me now, and they're everywhere. And I cannot fix you, I cannot make you stay. You're not mine to rescue, you're not mine to save. You're not mine to save. Somber little song for you. Okay, folks. Thank you for letting me sing that. I'm getting warmed up for tonight. Here's why I played you that tune. Other than that little section in there where it get the little 3-note F and then A minor suspension, that entire song is basically, if you're going to do cowboy chords, C, A minor, F, G, which is the basis of 1,450,000,000 zillion songs. This is probably a song that I had to write 1,000 other songs to ever get to a place where I would not care about just playing 4 chords the whole way through and it being in C. It landed that was in what I'm getting at. And some of you may already know, we fool ourselves all the time into Dylan, fooled myself into thinking I had something to protect. We fool ourselves into thinking we have so much to prove versus letting the melody work, letting the melody paint and kind of color the chords, and letting the lyrics work. Now, granted, this is the guitar corner, but we talk about creativity here a lot, and I'm getting ready to talk about somebody who had one of the great guitar players in his band, Petty and Mike and keyboard player Ben Montench. But the songs, man, so many of their hits. Free Fallin' was 3 chords. I mean, you can go on forever of how simple those songs were. But they were hits because they worked. And there's just so much you can do with just a simple chord change. So I know I've been doing a lot of kind of going off and playing, and I'm talking about the modes, which I still need to do an episode on. But for those of you that are kind of just beginning or are just not going, hey, look at me, I'm a buzzing bee. If you're just trying to get some chords down, that song's a good example of something that I've broken them up, and I try to do a little thing in the third verse. I crashed and burned a little where I basically I took the dyads and I'm just playing them 2 fingers. But basically that whole thing, again, C, A, F, G, and it's really about getting to a place where we have enough confidence to let the song sort of write us and let the parts write us. And if you're playing guitar maybe in another lineup, or even if you're playing covers but you get to kind of ad-lib a solo, it's a funny thing to watch. We can get so angry at the crowd, like, oh, you don't understand my music, or, I played this thing and nobody got it. The flip side of that is we can have bad nights and people will come up to us and they're like, oh, that was so great. And if you're new to this, I used to do this all the time. You're like, oh no, it was terrible. Nobody wants to hear that, especially if they paid any good money to see it. Let them, I would say 49% us, 51% them, let them enjoy the show. And if somebody enjoys a song, you can't argue with success. I used to hate on all these things that I thought, oh, this is so simple. Why don't they do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, that anger will burn you up. That song that simple may not be for some of the guitar players out there, but I think there's something really to be said for trying to make a melody work. So let's think that way on our guitars. That's one that was a vocal song for me, but I think it's great to think in that way on guitars, that whatever is moving people emotionally is the most important thing. So without further ado, the king of that idea right now for me, I'm down the rabbit hole. You know me, I get in these little couple weeks, I'll be ranting about somebody. I was Taylor Sheridan for a long time. All my friends, I watch Wind River and Hell or High Water and Mayor of Kingstown and 1883. I'm freaking out on Taylor Sheridan. But right now I'm freaking out on Tom Petty. So the book is Paul Zollo, who Zollo's done more work identifying the genius of songwriters than anybody. He has a couple books, Songwriters on Songwriting. If you're a writer, my God, there's so much cool stuff and they're so inspiring. Again, I don't think you can teach somebody how to write, but I think when you see kind of the trials and tribulations of somebody else, it can inspire you and give you ideas of what to do, what not to do. But this book, Conversations with Tom Petty, is Tom Petty going through basically every track, his whole catalog, talking about different things in the studio, how he wrote it. One of the coolest stories to me was that he was sort of in this place where he kind of felt a plateau, and he was over touring. I think he was touring with Bob Dylan. He was in London. He met George Harrison, Jeff Lynne, and he's like, man, we should get back together and get together in LA sometime. He goes home off that tour like 2 days later, pulls up at a stoplight. Jeff Lynne's there. He goes, come over. Apparently all their families started having Christmas together. They became friends just because of this chance encounter. But here's the crazy part. The first day they're in, I think it was, I don't know if it was Jeff Lynne's studio or Mike's studio, but somewhere, basically just a garage studio. And they write Free Fallin' in like 30 minutes. The story was, Petty's like, there's not a day goes by, somebody doesn't hum it or I hear it. That song took me 30 minutes. But anyway, they write that. The next day, it's I Won't Back Down. The next day, et cetera, et cetera. They take the record to MCA. The vice president of MCA says, I don't hear singles, which is funny because I think it's Into the Great Wide Open. He actually has that line, the A&R man says, I don't hear a single. They rejected Full Moon Fever. Now, I have a special place in my heart because when I first moved out to Los Angeles, I stayed in this little apartment in West Hollywood, and I was going down to the little gym, and I rocked that record on a freaking loop. It's so many great, pristine 12 strings. It's so clean. They tune that snare down like, 1,000 degrees and keep it really dry. Let Petty's voice through that C12 just shine. Nothing on it. They just let the song do the work. But anyway, Petty goes and plays with Traveling Wilburys, and then comes back a few months later, and of course it's somebody new at the label, and the Full Moon Fever had, 3 or 4 top 10 singles on it. But the songs on there drove him towards the Super Bowl eventually. So I guess another lesson to be learned, if you know it's good, keep plugging away, because sometimes the powers that be don't know. But there's so many amazing stories in this book. Forgive me, I'm going to use a cheat sheet because I made a little list of some things that popped out to me that I thought might be interesting to everybody out there, that inspired me a bunch. Also, my man Jerry Sumner, who I've mentioned before, helped my man Jamie and I when we were growing up. Jerry lent me his bass, his keyboard, all his instruments when he was going off on the road and stuff. And he's worked with everybody, had his own deal with the Clocks in the 80s, worked with Steppenwolf, but he was out with Petty years back here, not too long ago. And he said a great thing. He said, he goes, no matter what the temperature of the arena was, if you go in front of Petty's monitors, he goes, it's always 70 in Petty's world. Apparently they were just blowing up like exactly the temperature through the monitors. It was built-in heat and AC in the monitors. I think they were blowing in some other fumes up there, but that's none of my business. Noel Galan, our incredible tour manager back in the day, invited me to see Petty, and I couldn't do it, and I never got to see him live. So I'm living vicariously through all these books. But here, let me give you a few things real quick to chew on. This stuff is just, these are foundational, fundamental, tried and true things that to some degree every songwriter says, but he puts them so succinctly and so beautifully, and I feel like Zollo gets into his head. There's a lot of trust there. So it's a really cool book. I've been starting the mornings with some coffee and listening to a few tracks and what he says about him. So you might check it out. Anyway, one of the main things he says in Bob Dylan's Chronicles, Bob Dylan was talking about the only thing he thought was still moving forward at the time he wrote the book was hip hop. He was like, this is where really a lot of the people are still taking risks and chances. And of course, social commentary, all these things. But he said, someone will come along with a pure heart and something to say, and that will lead us to the next place. And so the beginning of this book with Petty is about that Petty had a pure heart the whole way through, that it was always about the purity of the band, the songs, getting to a good song, really work the craft of songwriting, working on a song for days, agonizing over the lines if you have to. But once you get it, lock it down. And I thought it was really interesting. If he had a song that wasn't working, he'd pitch it. I always made that mistake forever. If I try to save everything, I'm going to piece it all back together. You can get yourself spun in so many circles trying to finish every idea you have. It's like, kill your darlings, let some of them go. But the idea was that the band is sacred, the song is sacred, and you got to respect it. It's as he said, it's hard and lonely work, but you have to put in that work. That's something we've been talking about a bunch in these. But yeah, the chemistry of the band. Said your job is to capture lightning in a bottle, both on the page and on the stage. This wasn't in the book, but I think Petty first said it. I say it all the time in the studio. I'm like, all killer, no filler. And the other one, of course, is don't bore us, get to the chorus. That's a good one. But yes, if he says a really interesting thing, if you believe the singer, the song is going to work. If you believe the singer, the song is going to work. There's some Terminators out there on all the shows we've had the last few years, the American Idol, The Voice, the different things. And every now and then you get somebody like a Carrie Underwood or someone that is so authentic and so real that even knowing it's this, she could sing in the phone book, anything, it's her that's selling it as much as anything. The only problem I think we get with singers that are incredibly technical, but I mean, obviously I can't talk. I got, about 2 octaves if I'm lucky, and I let Aaron do some of the hard work. But I mean what I'm doing, and a lot of my favorite singers are like that. So it's the same with guitar playing, except I fall into that because I started with all the, fast guitar players when I was a little kid. I forget sometimes that it's the same with that. People want authenticity. They want you to be singing what you're playing. They want you to know what you're playing before you play it, not just going all over the fretboard to prove something. And I hear a lot of vocalists in pop music do that, where they have these incredible voices, but I don't really believe what they're saying or think that necessarily that song is coming from them. But anyway, I'm not trying to hate on anybody. I just think Petty really proves that you could be exactly who you are and not have this, incredible technical voice. And he actually has quite a few octaves, but by absolutely inhabiting the song. He said an interesting thing too. He said, I can't sing lyrics written by somebody else because I can't get myself in a place where I can believe them. But a couple more things. By the way, Willie Nelson's Red-Headed Stranger was one of my other favorite records of all time. And we did our Genius of Willie a few episodes back. That record was rejected by the labels too. They said it sounded like a demo because it was too stripped down. That was what broke Willie. Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain was his first single. He was playing arenas soon after. So again, if you know it's good, if you know what you're doing is real, keep on trucking. He said he wasn't a tortured soul. He said you can get good stuff without suffering. Petty's childhood, you could feel him not wanting to throw his family under the bus, but he obviously went through some very difficult things. If you've had enough grist for the mill young, I'm sure you can being in a good place and writing. I think you know what it takes to write. It takes confidence, and he talks about this. And I think maybe that was what I was trying to say at the beginning of this with the song I played you, was I finally had enough confidence to just write a song with the most basic pop changes ever, because that's just what came out, and not second guess it. Get out of your own way. Don't overthink. Let the song do the work, that kind of stuff. I was down in Austin, Texas, and I got to hang out at Bob Schneider's house for a little bit and was talking to him. And he was watering around the pool, and we were talking about writers and stuff. And he said the heaviest thing to me, I'm a big fan of his writing. He's a brilliant cat. Actually, you want to check out a cool podcast, man. It's Bob Schneider every week. Or once a month. He just goes off for an hour, but he's funny. He writes 5-6 songs a month and he puts them on there. It's really, really cool. But he said a really interesting thing. I asked him, I said, man, do you read Charles Bukowski? Because I'm getting into his poetry. And if you've been watching these things, like you can see where I've got 1,000 of his books. And I was like, man, some of his stuff is so mind-blowing. And he said the craziest thing, and believe me, Bob could write anything. But he said something really great, and I hope it's okay I'm sharing this. He said, I thought it was so honest. He goes, you know, what we do takes tremendous belief in what we're doing in that moment. It takes tremendous confidence to finish a song. It takes tremendous confidence to practice a guitar and play it out in front of somebody, get on stage, do this stuff. And he said, when I see somebody that good, he goes, it almost kind of knocks us off our game for a second, which was such an incredible thing for him, because he's a great poet, and I'm sure he's probably read all those books. But I feel that way with a lot of my heroes. Grapes of Wrath, Steinbeck, Cormac McCarthy, his books. The writing is so strong. There's seconds there where you're kind of like, what am I doing? But I look at it like, nope, just let it feed you, just let it inspire you. And look, if we only got so many days on the planet, we might as well be taking in your garbage in, garbage out. Let's take in the things that are killer. What else was here? I'm almost done here. Talked about chords and talked about how he doesn't even actually know all the chords he's playing, but that people will say to him, hey, I learned your song, or somebody will kind of play something, around him like, hey, I'm covering your song. And he makes an interesting point. He's not being a jerk when he says it. He's like, even though they're simple chords, they're his variations. They're his, we talked about this in a couple of the guitar episodes. The way you voice something or phrase something is more important than seeing C11 or whatever's on the page. The way you make it come out, leaving a note out can be more important than adding another note. But he's basically getting at that his inversions, the ones he's come up with, and he does this a lot. Where I do this, the G chord where you have open D and G, D and G, just makes it sound like a 12 string instead of doing the cowboy chord. That third, depending on the song, that third is really hokey. So you get this and move to the C, same thing, bright, open. You hit that on a big stage, those amps ring for 1,000 years. And then you go down to the B, and then on D, I like that one a lot. And I've heard him do that one too quite a bit on like Full Moon Fever, Into the Great Wide Open, things with a lot of 12 string stuff. So that's 5, 4, open, 3. So you got that little suspension in there. But just things like that, where normal G, C, D can be, or a G, C, where it'd be almost country, you can get into these more Americana voicings. So there's just something really, really special to finding your own voice, even if it's the simplest chords. And that's why I started with that one, I'm going, at that point, that's a 2-note chord. That's just root and fifth. But by leaving out the third, it almost pulls you towards a suspension. Like by not having that minor or major third, I think you almost, in the harmonics, the overtones of a guitar, it almost pulls you towards hearing a 2 or a 4 in there, which I think U2, the Edge based, a million arenas on that idea of leaving notes out. I remember they asked Joe Satriani, who's your favorite guitar player? He said The Edge. I thought it was so perfect. And Prince said Ani DeFranco. It's just cool knowing who people love. But anyway, okay, I'm going all over the place here. Let me know, man, you got any Tom Petty stories? I just wish I would have seen him, because the more I dig into these books, man, what a heavy, interesting cat who kept the band together, who kept doing the work, and who never strayed from the song. No matter how much money or fame, his house burned down, some idiot set it on fire, all the incredible, crazy things that happened to him, he still went to work, man. He toured till he was touring a few months before he passed away, just like Prince. We lost some legends these last few years. Anyway, all right, shoot, I'm up at like 20 minutes today. I love y'all. I hope you found some stuff in here that was inspiring. See you next week.